recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by the code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not be fully resolved by city staff. It is important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without the need for any board review. Thus, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined on the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. Our first order of business will be to modify our agenda. Agenda item number 5, 27 West on Wednesday, will not be heard tonight. This matter will be postponed until July 6, 2011, at which time I expect the Building Review Board to take final action on this petition. I encourage the petitioner to submit any additional information in response to the issues raised at the previous public meetings to city staff by June 15th. I would like to thank everyone for their patience as we have worked to address some complex issues surrounding this petition. The next order for approval is the approval of the minutes from the May 4th, 2011 meeting. Do I have any comments or questions relating to the meeting minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve such meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes from the May 4th, 2011 meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain since I wasn't at that meeting.
Thank you. The minutes have been approved. Our next item is a consent agenda item. Items on the consent agenda are recommended for approval without presentation or discussion. An item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a board member or member of the public to allow for a full presentation and discussion. Any item removed from the consent agenda is heard at the end of the regular agenda. Is there anyone on the board or public who wants to pull this consent agenda item? Okay. Not hearing any of that, we will take to vote the consent agenda item, which is a request for approval of modifications to a previously approved project at 820 South Green Bay Road. Owners are Tim and Mary Funk, and the representative is Scott Straliff, architect. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda item is approved. The next item is a continued petition for a request for approval of the demolition of the existing residence and approval of a replacement structure at 105 Washington Circle. Owners are Jim and Linda Jensen, and the representative is Robert Gebelhoff. At this time, before we get started, excuse me, I'd like to ask anyone from the board if we have any conflicts of interest for this petition.
I have conflicts, so I will recuse myself from this petition.
Thank you. Welcome, John. We're just asking if there's anyone who has conflict of interest for agenda item number 6, which is 105 Washington Circle. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. You may proceed.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Jim Jensen. Second time in front of the board. And just wanted to open up with, I'm sure everybody's read the letter from staff on the latest. But essentially, we have, from the last meeting to now, we've met with subcommittee of the board, with John and Stuart 2 times, and met with staff an additional times. We've had 3 additional meetings to essentially redo the project with a lot of input. And I will go out and say that the process has been actually really, really good. I think the replacement structure we have now is a better overall option. So we're really pleased with it and like to review it with you tonight. So I'm sure you have it in front of you. We also have a copy up on the screen as well. So the first one I just identifies the lot, and I think many of you are aware it's a long skinny lot. It's 50 in the front, 30 in the back, so a bit of a pie shape. What it identifies in this area here is the existing structure outside of the setbacks. And what this shows is obviously the new structure within the setbacks with the garage in the back. But as Megan stated in the staff letter, that it does meet all the requirements within the setbacks. 40 feet in the front, 10 on the sides, and 5 in the back by the garage. And the board has copies of this, but I wanted to point it out to say that there were comments that were specific to improving the rear portion of the yard, and I'll point to it. It's in here, where the initial plan had a raised or an elevated deck, which we subsequently removed, and we've also taken the tact of going the route of pervious pavers to allow the groundwater as well, and wanted to point that out. There was also questions our last time up specifically about the landscape plan, and this identifies that we've had a professional landscaper come in and identify where all the plantings are. It's also line listed below which specific varieties as well. This landscape plan doesn't provide plantings as indicated on staff recommendation in the letter we received yesterday regarding the east portion, which is right here. This is the back of the garage. There's a setback of 5 feet, and we left that clear to be able to get behind the garage, maintain it, and so forth. So here we get into the elevations. So on the left, obviously, is west or the front elevation of the house, and the rear elevation, the east facing as well. And what we've got, I just want to point out a few changes that we've made and indicated also in the staff letter. Across here, we have a full front porch, and it's not a faux porch, it's a usable porch. It's 4 feet in depth, so it's actually usable. We've also extended the walk-up width, so the porch width, making it more of a feature coming into the house. We've also added board and batten shutters that are more consistent with the Midwest vernacular farmhouse style. There was also comments from previous meetings to take the windows from a 9/1 to 6/1, and we've done that consistently throughout all the windows in the house. We've also converted those windows from casements to double hung as requested. And then I should have pointed out at the beginning, but the roof line is significantly changed to a full gable, and we've done a partial gable coming down, but the whole roof line has actually changed quite a bit from the original. In the rear, in the back of the house, the east facing, if you remember, here's the stairway that enters from the ground level patio. There were 2 of these. There was a second one here with an entrance door, and again, with I think some really good input, we've decided we really only need 1, and we moved the door to, you can't see it on this photo, but on the side, you'll see it on the next elevation. We've also took the shed idea from the front and converted that to the rear to have some continuity and to have some matching elements. I'm going to switch to the north elevation now. So I'm pretty happy with this. What we've got before, there was a lot of discussion about the massing, it's such a long house. Is we've broken it up in 3 distinct sections, and within each section we've lowered the roof line to stand off that section even more. Obviously we've carried the theme of the 6/1s, we've carried the theme with the board and batten, and we also made a feature, and I'll point it out here, where there was a lot of discussion about the small dormers in the previous design. What we've done is taken a shed dormer design, or shed design here, and make a feature of this whole wall, essentially giving it, I think, more flair and have it stand off a bit more. We've also repositioned the windows a bit, if you remember from the last time as well. And lastly, I just wanted to point out the south elevation. There was quite a bit of discussion on the south elevation last time about window placements, and we've firmed that up quite a bit. We've carried the detail of the shed dormer here that allows the light into the room as we discussed last time. And again, continued the elements of the board and batten shutters where appropriate. And we also wanted to ensure we had the side view detail. I mentioned earlier, this entrance door is now on the south facing elevation versus the east. This is into the mudroom area. And then we've taken all of the railing and column detail down to the ground from the front and matched it in the back, so there's some continuity there. So with that, that's all I have to specifically present, and I wanted to hand it back to the board and staff.
Thank you. Would staff like to report at this time?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to back up a bit, this is a request for a demolition and a replacement structure. The board did review the request a couple months ago and was generally supportive of the demolition aspect of the home. The foundation really couldn't support expansion in the vertical direction, and given the non-conforming location of the property, additions and required roof connections really made alternatives to demolition difficult. The board gave some clear direction to the petitioner to simplify the design, be consistent with an architectural style, and really scale the replacement structure to better fit the neighborhood and the streetscape. The board appointed a subcommittee of 2 board members to meet with the petitioner. As was mentioned, the subcommittee met on 2 occasions and really worked with the petitioner to simplify the mass, to reduce the appearance of mass from the street and provide some better proportion to the front elevation. I think with this petition especially, the details are going to be very important for the success of the project. And as you read through the conditions of approval in the staff report, they really request that detailed drawings of the rake and the eave return be provided at the time of permit, so that we can really make sure that the detailing and the level of detailing is appropriate for this neighborhood, which is really a modest neighborhood of older housing stock. I do welcome the board's comments on various aspects of this design. I think the proposal has come a long way since you last saw it a couple months ago. There are some specific conditions of approval that I'd like to call out pertaining to tree preservation. There's a request for a tree preservation plan, and that's really to respond to the comments that came up at the last meeting with respect to the trees in proximity to the construction and the overhanging branches. So we would like to have additional information on how that will be accommodated at the time of permit, so that we know what to expect with the construction. With respect to the garage, there is a condition of approval to enhance the landscaping behind the garage. And the city arborist did go out and look at the plan and look at the proposed site plan. recognizing that that's a tight area, it probably won't get very good light. He did suggest a trellis or some sort of trellis with vines treatment to that wall, just to soften the appearance of new construction from the neighboring property, given the tightness of the lots in this neighborhood and proximity to outdoor living spaces for neighboring properties. We did receive a letter from Board Member Trey. He's unable to make it to this meeting this evening, but he was part of the subcommittee. He provided a letter to the board, it's included in your packets, expressing support for the process and the proposal that's being presented to you this evening. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Megan. We will have questions and requests for clarification from the board now. And maybe Jonathan would be willing to start based on being a subcommittee member also.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to tell the rest of the board that the petitioner has been very accommodating and also appreciative of the process. I think the subcommittee process where we had open discussion on reasons for certain elements and expressed alternative designs that were, the petitioner seemed very open to understanding our rationale for whatever, and seems to have adopted and adapted the design to simplify, become more appropriate to the neighborhood with the use of details. And some of those details had to do with, as Megan said, how the eave return, rather than having the pork chops, we've got an elegant eave return. Some of the more logical elements where it got overly contrived on the rear of the house with multiple doors, a door coming out of the family room and a door and another rail and another set of stairs coming out of the mudroom. We were able to condense that into one single set of stairs. So I think we took some of the fuzz off of it and simplified the roof, certainly, to just leave a continuous side-to-side gable rather than a side-to-side intersecting with a front-to-back and that kind of thing. The more appropriate shed dormers simplified the design. Expressing the stairs on the south elevation was, I think, an elegant solution. And it will look good on the inside as well as expressing what the plan is on the outside. You know, having said that, I think it's a very appropriate solution to an otherwise difficult lot, as it's narrows and everything else. But that narrowing of the lot actually worked in our favor, where we were able to, on the side elevations, diminish the overall bulk or length of that by necessity to break the building down into these 3 or 4 parts as we go further back. I think there's a nice sense of human scale to the front porch and the gable entry that defines it. Similarly, I think there's a nice human scale to the rear of the building and an introduction of a similar gable there. I think he's got good use of his land with the patio and the turnaround for the garage and everything else. So I don't have any questions. One thing that maybe the rest of the board, if you could put the north side elevation up, please.
Sure.
When you come down the driveway, and this is an elevation that the homeowner sees most of the time and not necessarily the neighborhood to any great degree, but both Megan and I and Stuart felt that combining the feature window that's in the master and the family room below, and creating creating a 2-story bay-like element to that, made an interesting and I think appropriate feature of that. My question to the petitioner would be the panel that you have there, the larger one on the second floor and the smaller one on the first floor. That's a large, massive panel that, in other words, I'm assuming that's going to be a MDF or a sheet of plywood or something like that. I wonder if there couldn't be an element introduced that to break up the size of that, 4x8 sheet of something. In other words, should that be 3, and I'm asking the board, should that be 3 separate panels? Should there be one large panel? Should there be another element or another layer put to that to break the scale of that larger panel up, and if you're gonna do the larger one, you know, would you do the smaller one? So I'll leave that open. I mean, the petitioner is presenting, I think, what he determined to be appropriate, and I don't have a comment until I hear other people's thoughts on it, but I'm in favor of this petition and appreciative of your efforts.
Thank you. Do we have any other board questions?
I have a couple. Can you refresh my memory as to the color palette?
We took your comments from last time and looked at it again, because you did mention color last time. Chet, can I bring this up? What this represents as the cedar shingles, and this represents the banding, this represents the cedar siding. And the direction pulled out with the actual colors, it's a solid stain, and it's a bare product. The intention of this one was to literally match the cedar color, the raw cedar color, and keep it the cedar color. And then this was a tone-on-tone play off of this. If I can set it here.
Thank you. And this may just be a little computer glitch, but you had said that all the windows were gonna be 6/1s, and there are a couple of 4/1s.
Yeah, and I think if, Bob, if you want to.
On the east elevation, well, on this elevation, if you wanna keep the north one up, in the center section, those two lower windows,
I think it has to do with the width of the window.
Right.
okay,
The proportion of the windows, if it's 6 in there, would be very skinny little panels, they're narrow windows.
okay,
So I think my comments just basically is anywhere where we had a 9/1 solution, we converted to a 6/1 solution.
okay, all right. And can you walk me through your thought process on the shutter style, please? The board and batten?
Yeah, no problem. What we did.
And what color would they be?
They would be the trim color, so that's the white color, it's a brown toned white color. The idea was, we looked at all of the shutter styles for Midwestern vernacular farmhouse when you research it, and I don't know the math, but about 50% of them came up as board and batten, and another 50% came up with the louvered style. It just seems to be that way. We drew it up both ways, and I honestly felt that when we drew it up with the horizontal louvers, it looked like a play off of Victorian. It just didn't. I didn't feel it worked right, and we went back and forth. There was agreement, disagreement, but that was what I felt met the style requirements, and it was on many farmhouse styles. So that was a thought process.
Okay, thank you. I guess I could also go either way.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's debatable.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question on the exterior cladding. When you look at the east elevation, the gable, it's indicated as shingles. And then when you turn the corner to the north elevation, the wall that's immediately adjacent to it is a cedar siding, horizontal cedar siding.
Talking about right here.
Yeah, so see when you turn the corner
From here to here.
up on the second floor. I don't know if you wanted the back to be able to be the cedar shake. You know, I know that's what you have consistently in the front elevation, but as you turn that corner, you typically want to keep the horizontal cedar siding following
Okay.
along the edge. So I don't know if that's your intention to have it two different materials,
Just
or is
unclear.
it?
Could you kind of help me with my pen if I'm in the right area? Is it, you're not talking here?
No, well, just to the right of that,
Right
next to
here.
your, to see how that's a horizontal cedar siding?
Right.
And then when you turn the corner to the back, to the east side of the house?
Right here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that, anything above, you know, that plane should also be the horizontal cedar siding.
Okay. Okay.
Well, in the other gables, they have a band board that goes right across at the eave line.
Cool.
That gable drops down below the window line, so we couldn't continue to put the band board across and just get the cedar shingles in the gable end. So we brought brought the shingles all the way down, all the way to the shed roof down below.
Right, but when you look at it, like at the corner, you'll see that you have two different materials there. It's no different than in on the front side of the house on the west elevation. When you turn the corner from the west to the east at the front, you're being consistent along there. So I just think you need to be consistent throughout. And let's see, the porch details with the brackets. Are you looking at precedent for the locations of your brackets over the columns and such? Have you detailed that more thoroughly?
We provided a detail with the packet. It's going to be a wood block there. Just to confirm, you're talking about these portals.
Correct.
Okay, so the idea was they're just very simplistic.
And the end brackets, would those center over the columns? Right now, it looks like they're not centered over the columns.
Oh, I see what you're saying, just at these very ends? Sure, yeah, they should be centered with the columns. If they're not, they move over.
What color would those brackets be?
White with the trim.
Did you remove the chimney?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fairly controversial back and forth on the south elevation. And it's part of, I think, kind of cleaning it up and letting the kind of three separate pieces take over as the feature. We felt that the need for the chimney wasn't there, and the fact that it was a direct vent didn't really provide the requirement to have the chimney there. So it was felt that it was just kind of fluff in a way.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you guys made a lot of progress. It looks very nice. But if we could stay on that elevation, I guess that main, the first pod there, if you will, of the three, could you walk through the windows there, because it seems a little busy, but I think there's a staircase that goes up and down there that you wanted to.
Yeah, right here is there's a staircase that what we're trying to do is light that staircase, keep it well lit, keep it really open. And these three windows are along the staircase. These windows here are a feature to get light into the basement as well. And then there's a bathroom here and there's a bedroom there. So there's a few windows there, but I think it was cleaned up quite a bit from where you saw it in the past.
And then you've got shutters in just I guess the far eastern pod there. You've got shutters in the top window, and then down below, those shutters are actually not workable shutters. That's just a feature that you've put together there.
Right, and so where you're going with that is, what we want to do is put shutters where they would look workably appropriate, right, if you were to close them. And obviously on the triples, it didn't make sense because that you wouldn't have the center. In this area, we actually drew them in and it became far too busy. It looked like we were kind of trying to force it. And then over in here, we said is these two windows are surrounding the fireplace and the TV, and we still wanted to let light in the room, so they're high windows. And there was an idea from the group that we worked on to say we can utilize closed shutters down here to kind of give that wall a bit more feature depth to break up the massing. And I thought it looked appropriate for the area.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, seeing that we have no further questions here, is there any, this is time for public testimony. Is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on this petition? None, thank you. Any final questions from the board? Comments?
I would just like to get the board's response to the panels that are on the north side and get your impressions on where that should go, or if you like it, then that's fine as well.
The only problem I had with it was I thought the second story one was a little big. And maybe, I don't know what the solution would be, but it just looks a little big.
But if you work it down to 3 panels that are lining up under the windows, that would break up the scale of that, but then would you do the same thing on the bottom one that is half the size? I don't know. Or would that be a solution?
Well, I like breaking up the second story.
There you go. Why did you do that?
Trusty
It's
big man.
2 trim pieces, John, I'd be happy to do it.
I think I like them broken up, if you're gonna do it.
I was happy with them just solid. I thought that it looked pretty simplistic that way. I was a little concerned that, 3 wide would get too busy, but I don't want to overcomplicate the petition anymore, so either way.
Yeah, I guess
Would be
at
fine.
the end of the day,
Yeah,
I'm somewhat
I feel the
indifferent.
same way.
I wonder if they're white,
Whatever.
those are also white, they would be painted trim color?
Yeah, but we talked about it quite a bit as a group, how that particular color palette would look, and there seemed to be a consensus that entire feature would be white. So we wouldn't try to kind of, lack of a better term, cartoon it up a bit and have brown, white. And we kind of my wife and I looked at it and said, that seems to make a lot of sense. And then it just doesn't, is probably, if that was in color and the rest of the house showed the brown and the tan, I'm not sure the breaking up piece is that big of a deal because that whole feature is white.
Yeah, I think based on the whole feature being white, a solid panel is okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further?
Are we going to discuss?
Any discussion?
Oh, yeah, I guess I have some comments. I think it's a great improvement from the last time. I mean, I think the project it's been simplified. It does fit more into the street, which, as has been mentioned, is very vernacular, a lot of farmhouses, There's all kinds of different styles on the street, but they are all fairly simple in their massing. So I think this has gone a long way into fitting with the street. One of the issues I had last time was all the crazy eave, projections and the different sizes, and so I'm pleased that, they're consistent in the depth that they project. I do agree with staff that, when it goes to permit, there needs to be the detail so that it is actually detailed historically and appropriately, as well as the front porch. The brackets should center over the columns, and there's proportions that should be addressed in detail. The shutters, at first when I looked at them, I thought, well, I wasn't sure where that was coming from, so looking at it, I imagine that could work fine, but I could go to the louvered shingle as well. There's just so many of them.
Can
I
you
think-
explain what
Makes me
color they
wonder-
are?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
white, right?
The intention was that they were to match the trim, so we're only identifying 3 total colors to the
Got it.
house. And this is one that we've looked at so many times on drawings both ways. And man, it just presents as a very different looking house to me with those horizontal louvers.
And I don't know if it was clear to the other board members what I was trying to get across with the siding changing,
No, I agree.
around the
Right.
corner.
Absolutely.
But I do think that needs to be addressed, that the east elevation should, either have the trim band so it separates the gable, so the top part of the gable has the shingles similar to the west elevation, or the east elevation gable should all be horizontal siding. I don't-
Especially since there's a color change between the 2 materials, that'll become more evident.
Right, you don't
So,
want it to
agreed.
look like a cartoon, like,
Well,
well,
one-
it's
yeah.
not Disneyland that it's horizontal here and then it's shingles on the other side. And, what else was I?
Yeah.
Is that something the
Oh,
petitioner is
and I'm
willing
sorry,
to?
we were talking about it, because what we originally had was the east elevation quite closely matched the west elevation to Monica's point. What we found is that those bedroom windows here, they interfered with the banding to keep it consistent, and it was either lower the windows or have the banding cut up, and neither seemed an elegant solution. So that's why we just flowed the shingles down. So we had it the other way, we just couldn't quite make it work properly.
Could you bring shingles onto the north side? I think would be the solution that might be less
Or you just,
contrived.
or you just bring that horizontal trim band up higher in that east gable, you know, so,
And that's perfectly
You could.
fine. I mean, if that's acceptable, that's just raising the banding up, but it's slightly off from the match.
correct. So on the second floor line is all horizontal cedar all the way around, and then the attic and above is shingle. And I agree with Maddie's comment, you know, all the other windows are, you know, 3 wide, 2 high, except for those couple little casement windows and the one window in the east elevation, and you know, they're so close in size that I'm pretty sure that you can get that casement window to be the 3 wide, 2 high, and I think that would be an improvement for the elevations.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, did you say casement window?
Yeah, you have
The double ones, aren't
The double hungs.
they?
but the casement windows that are up in the second floor that are the 2 wide, 2 high, they could become 3 wide, 2 high.
Bathroom windows.
Oh,
No, on the south elevation.
On the
You're
south
talking about the
elevation.
south
yeah.
elevation, yeah.
As Maddie pointed out, those, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, they're almost the same width as the double hung, so most window manufacturers, you have the option of getting those to be the 3 wide, 2 high.
Okay, just so I'm clear, you're suggesting, now that I've found the right windows, you're suggesting what?
They should be consistent with the top sash of the double hung windows.
Okay, but the intention making is a larger window?
No, you're not saying to make it larger, just
No.
saying to add another
Correct.
It's another million.
One more vertical bar to that.
more vertical here and then just a one.
Oh, right, with that same size window, just with the detail.
Correct, so it would just match the top sash of the double hung.
Monica, my original question was about the other, on the east elevation.
The smaller window.
Right.
Yeah, and those are what originally had concerned me. And on the north elevation, the 4/1s.
Right, those, yeah.
And do you think you can get those as 6/1s or not?
I didn't do anything.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have consistency.
Narrow, but that would be 6/2.
Because they're called out as like a 25 versus a 29, so just by making them 3 inches wider, you can get the 3 wide.
Okay.
Is that something the petitioner is willing to accommodate?
That's not a problem.
Okay. Regarding the windows, and how about the cedar siding?
Just for clarity, just to understand, I'm happy to put a banding higher than the window where it doesn't interfere with the window, right? And then the shingles above that, that's what you stated? Yeah, clearly that's what we had, we'll just move the banding a bit, up a bit.
Great, thank you. Okay, now any discussion from the board? No questions? Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion regarding this petition?
I move well, first, do we have a demolition to approve?
Yes.
I move we approve the demolition.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any abstain? No, okay. The demolition, subject to the replacement structure, is approved.
I'll move that we approve the replacement structure based on comments from the board with regard to materials on the east elevation and grill patterns on all windows being consistent.
And staff recommendation?
And staff's recommended boilerplate contingencies.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The petition is approved. Congratulations, and thank you for working with everybody.
Thank you, appreciate
Thank
it.
Going back to a previous agenda item, we had on the agenda item number 3, which was recognition of our past chairman, Lloyd Culbertson. Since we had saw that he wasn't here, I had passed over that one, and we will postpone it to a later time or date in which he can be present to receive his recognition. So, moving forward then, we have a new, item number 7, a new petition for a request for approval of the demolition of the existing residence and approval of a replacement structure at 980 Cedar Lane. The owners are Matt and Victoria Phillips, and the representative is Wade Weissman, the architect. At this time, do we have any board members who have a conflict of interest?
Madam Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself for a conflict on this.
Okay. Anyone else? Excellent. Thank you.
I'm Wade Weissman. I'm the architect on the project. My clients who are here this evening and myself are presenting a proposal to demolish a residence at 980 Cedar Lane in Lake Forest. We would like to propose a new structure for the residence. The purpose of the project, obviously, is to create a safe and comfortable, beautiful home to raise their young family. The project removes the aging and neglected structure that's on the site now to make room for the building that we think would enhance the entire neighborhood. The proposed residence, we feel, is sympathetic in style, massing, materials, and landscaping to the surrounding homes on the street. So the first part of the project here is the demolition of the existing structure. Due to the existing conditions and the neglect, the program and the style for the new house, and budget constraints, the petitioner proposes to demolish the existing residence to erect a new home on the property. In the project that we're showing here, that's the existing residence, there's really no historic relevance to the project. It was built in 1964. The packet includes a proposal to utilize the existing structure with additions for a new residence. We feel that it's cost prohibitive, considering the amount of work that would need to be redone in the existing structure. There's water damage in the building that has resulted in black mold. The floor framing members are undersized. We have cracked structural members in the building. We think that there could be potential collapse with snow load. We think that the footings are undersized and poorly built. The stair width and tread dimensions are too small and not code compliant. And we feel like we also know that there's possible radon in the basement due to a lack of concrete flooring. These pictures kind of show the conditions of the site. We propose to build a structure in a similar location to this building that's existing, with its orientation, though, more orthogonal to the site lines and site boundaries. The property is actually a flagpole property that fronts on Waukegan Road. And a good portion of that property is essentially an easement called Cedar Lane that leads back to the property. So this particular property boundary continues all the way down to the west. The majority of it being easement, you can see, is outlined by a dotted line on the south end of the property. The orientation of the house being orthogonal is, the massing of it is sort of set up as a main residence and two dependencies, each having a hyphen, one being building program, the other being a porte cochere that leads to the southernmost pavilion. That in turn creates a front courtyard, which is landscaped with, I'll let the landscape designer discuss it. These sketches were provided to show essentially the massing of the building, which essentially is a more simple sort of structure, rigorous in its delineation with 4 equal bays across the south facade facing the street. Each one then, sort of having some, rigorously placed openings and 3 roof dormers on a hipped roof, which is consistent with the French eclectic style that we chose this project to be. The 2 dependencies are to the west. The one to the north is the main attached garage structure, has a similar but obviously smaller massing as the main residence, and then a secondary structure, which the porte cochere essentially sort of terminates at. The front court is meant to be sort of a European style, sort of open courtyard type of plan or terrace, surrounded with plantings, and that helps delineate the 2 driveway approaches coming in from the angle, the rounded piece towards the west, and then a gap on the east side, which then goes into the sort of yard and garden space on the east side of the house. The materials that we've chosen for this project, as we get into the elevations, are a reclaimed Cream City brick for all of the pilasters and for the water table around the building. The infill is a cement stucco, 3-coat cement stucco, again with that sort of warm sort of with ochre overtones to match or go with the brick, so it's more monochromatic. The eave details and the trim is wood painted consistently with that, a little more animated and has a little bit more style to it. The windows are casement style window. They're aluminum clad and they're in black. We have some additional black pieces on the building as metal ornament. That would be the false balcony over the front door, which is also on ornamental iron scrolls. The railings that are stepping up to the front porch. The metal on the roof is a pre-finished metal to be in sort of color of zinc. Those are for the dormers and for the standing seam portion at the cap and for the downspouts and gutters that are around the building. The chimney pots are also glazed in black, be consistent. This is the west facade. So as you're coming up the street, if you were looking towards the northeast, you would see the 2 pavilions sort of flanking the parking court. It helps to isolate the automobiles and the cars, and since it's going to be a young family and there'll be sort of probably kids playing in that area, it helps that the porte cochere then creates more privacy for that court. You can see that there are 2 chimneys. Both of them come through the house. The one on the furthest to the north is actually got a fireplace on the outside as well. And we go to the north elevation, you can see how that works. There is a hyphen between the main residence and the main garage. which has some support program in it that has a brick water table and a wood shiplap siding on it, painted consistently with the same color as the trim on the house. That has a parapet roof on it with a membrane roofing on it. And there's a sort of sunroom piece that projects further to the north and then creates a nice northeastern courtyard, L-shaped courtyard that is centered with that fireplace on the outside and flanked by two terrace doors that go into the main living space. On the east elevation, the east elevation again has more rigor to it, like the south elevation. Again, the pilasters and coining at the corners, the rest of the infill is consistent with the rest of the facade being stucco and wood trim, same kind of window detail. We would like to bring the landscape architect up to discuss the site development.
We had two main goals when working on this. First of all, we wanted to accent the outside of the house, but
Sorry,
not...
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Aaron Zick from ILT Vignacchi.
Thank you.
We wanted to accent the outside of the house, but not cover up the details, the beautiful details that Wade just went over in his presentation. The second main goal we had was to sort of outline the main access routes that were throughout the property. Those were the main access route from Cedar Lane coming up into the main courtyard, and we accented that with an alley of trees. Some of the other ones were on the east side. We have three larger trees that sort of focus your view from the patio and from the house, focusing your eye to the east. And then we also added some evergreen trees to the west side, when you saw from Wade's elevation, to sort of provide some more privacy from Cedar Lane and the neighbors into that courtyard area. Around the south courtyard, we did install a hedge of miskim lilacs to provide some separation between that courtyard and the surrounding landscapes out of that. And then the last one is we do have a play area and lawn area to the north side that is buffered from the existing landscape on the north side of the property.
Thank you. At this time, would staff please submit the report?
Thank you, Chairman. This project was actually before the board in 2006, so probably before any of you were on the board. And it was approved as a demolition and a replacement structure with some conditions of approval at that time with respect to the scale of the structure and detailing. No permit was ever applied for or issued for that work, and those approvals have since lapsed. But just a little background on this property. Since then, there's a new owner, a new architect, and a new design that's being presented to the board tonight. I think the petitioner did a pretty good job of explaining the materiality of the project and the proposed massing. I would like to point out that this project is about 1,800 square feet below the maximum permitted bulk, which is a big shift from projects that we were seeing in 2006. So this is a significantly smaller massed home than what was previously approved. However, there will be an increase in height. It is a one-story structure now that's proposed for demolition. The replacement structure is a two-story structure, but it's not inconsistent with other development that's occurred on Cedar Lane or in the neighborhood. Additionally, the city arborist has provided a preliminary review of the landscape plan and did encourage some additional plant material to be installed on the west side of the property. And the plans that you have in your packet do reflect those discussions. There are some standard conditions of approval in the staff report. But at this time, staff is recommending approval of the proposed replacement structure as well as the demolition, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Megan. We will open that up to the board for questions of the petitioner or of staff.
Did you mention what the roof material was and the color?
It's a machine cut
Step.
cedar shingle.
Would you please step forward? Thank you.
Machine cut cedar shingle.
Okay. No. The first floor ceiling height, is that like 10.6?
Yes.
And the second floor is,
Well, it's 9.
Okay.
But part of the ceiling would be clipped where the roof, the hip roof is. So, but the main portion of that floor would have a 9-foot ceiling.
and the structure is at its maximum height as drawn? right?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you explain to me, I'm not an architect, why the front door is off-center? When
Well-
you've got your dormers up above or centered and,
Right. We felt as if it worked better with the plan to essentially have an asymmetrical entry in a rigorous facade. So we chose to go with 4 equal bays and then move the door into one of the 2 sides of that elevation. It worked well with the site plan in that as you look up that angled driveway, you see the door on the, the front doors on the angle. We think it's actually more interesting, and it's a little more informal, even though the house is more geometrically rigorous. And so we sort of really enjoyed the sort of the architectural enhancement of that.
Are each of those bays the same width?
They are very close to being the same width.
Okay.
The one where the front door is barely slightly larger, and it's hard to detect because of the fact that the openings are larger in that bay, and because there's more things in that bay,
Okay.
obviously the focus,
Right.
it actually works pretty well. But the pilaster in the middle is definitely on center. So we've just essentially adjusted slightly
Okay.
the rigors of the.
Okay, that being said, then you only have 3 dormers in the roof, and how are they centered on the roof, or?
They are
would
centered
you-
on the roof, yes. And because they're slightly up, the roof structure, and the roof structure, obviously, in elevation, you see it this way, but,
Right.
really in perspective, you wouldn't see it that way. You'd see that there are 3 dormers, and they look very much like they're in coordination with the facade. Even though they're further up, you never see them completely in alignment. So they are centered on the roof.
As opposed to over the pilasters?
Yes. If you look at them very
Just because
closely.
sometimes, you can, when something's finished like that, your eye looks like it's not seeing something centered.
Well, actually, the center dormer is centered on that pilaster, and the pilaster is centered on the building.
Okay.
It's the pilaster just right of that. If you look at the dormer is probably about 6 inches off. But you would never be able to pick that up because of the angle of the roof and the fact that they're never in perfect alignment.
Is the roof flared at that?
The roof angles back, obviously.
Right, okay. Okay.
What is the material of the face of those dormers?
It's a pre-finished metal. Again, it's consistent with the other sort of metal pieces that we have as sort of feature. The color is this sort of rich gray. It almost looks like it's zinc clad.
And when the dormers return, is it also the
It's
metal?
the same, yeah.
It's not the
No, the whole
machine
thing is
cut?
the same color, right?
Okay. The trim around the windows, is that a stone or is that a molded stucco?
It's actually wood.
Oh,
And it's painted.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a couple questions, maybe. First one for staff. Has the arborist looked at the planting on the west side or weighed in on that?
The plant material that is shown on the landscape plan is consistent with his direction.
Okay, thank you. A couple questions for the petitioner. The lilac hedge around the auto court, how high will that be?
That'll be anywhere between 3 and 4 feet over time.
Okay. And then I noticed on the grading plan in the back, there's a hickory tree right next to the patio. And on the grading plan, it shows it being preserved. I'm not quite sure on the landscape plan if that tree is going to stay or not.
That is going to stay. It's such a beautiful tree. We actually changed our landscape plan to save that tree.
Okay. Do you think it's realistic that you can save it with the grade change that you're going to have? But it looks like coming out of that first floor, you have one step down to the patio and then 3 or 4 steps down to the lawn. Is that going to be feasible to save that tree?
I do. The reason is there is an elevation change, and we're
Okay.
going to clean cut the roots, and then we're going to put a retaining wall next to that.
Okay.
So we won't be grading right around the majority of the roots of the tree.
Okay, thank you. And one other question I had, or maybe just a thought on, I know there was a lot of thought put into drainage in the south side of the house with a French drain that's 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep, and filled up with gravel. But it appears like the north side of the house is really where the major drainage is, and that's where you have a lot of the focus of the outdoor living space with the patio and the play area. I was just wondering your thoughts on having that area right where there is so much drainage coming through there.
I'll try to answer the best I can. Actually, when we were first looking at this project, there was obviously a lot of rain this spring, and in that area, the water is further north near the property line and flows across that area rather than interfere with where we have the entertainment space and the children's play area right now. So most of the water was flowing, and I believe in keeping with that is still going to flow closer to that property line. And that's where a lot of those existing ash trees are on the north side there. And it should not affect that entertainment space at all.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now.
And I'm sorry, could you tell me again, on the north elevation, the wood trim panels that are up there, are those painted to match?
Yeah, it's all, right, exactly. We'd like the building to have more of a monolithic appearance, and so all the colors are, and we did bring materials too. But yeah, the panels, the bays for the windows, and along that elevation, the long part of the elevation, it's a shiplap wood, which is essentially in the same plane. So, there's just a slight gap between it, but again, very consistent with the sort of style of the house, in that it is a more casual material, it's a more casual part of the house, but the whole thing is essentially wood, and then it's painted.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, at this time then, if there are any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none. Any final comments from the petitioner? Thank you. Final questions from board or comments? Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion regarding this petition?
we're not discussing.
Comments, final comments or
Oh,
discussion?
oh, yeah,
I'm sorry.
I guess I have some final comments.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought there was gonna be more questions.
Yeah. no.
Yes, I have some
Final
final
questions
comments.
or comments?
I always have comments, I guess. First of all, I guess going to the demolition, going to the site and seeing the condition of the home, I can understand why it's a candidate to be removed. It looks like somebody hasn't been there for a long time, and there's a good cause to remove it. I did like the style of the old house. It was pretty nice, in nature itself, taking, advantage of the site. So, but having said that, I think the replacement structure is a very nice piece of architecture. I do like the French eclectic style of it. It's kind of mixing between formal and informal, kind of playful, working with the family and the site. And I like how the garages are broken up into the two wings. The things that, Peggy and Maddie kind of brought up with the dormers, being centered on the roof or being, centered over the pilasters. I can almost see it going either way, because, looking at it from a distance, when you see the dormers equally across the roof, that is something that you would perceive, and that it would look balanced. But the dormers at the side are so close to being centered on the pilasters. I don't know, what the proper direction is, but as the architects have chosen this way, I would tend to agree with that. I think the color selections are really beautiful and would work well with the house. I have concerns with the overall height of the structure. Driving in on Cedar, all the houses at the front of the street are all the single-family ranches, but as those have been removed, the adjoining neighbors are a bit taller. So, yes, it can fit, but it does seem to be the tallest structure on the street. That's why I just was wondering what the ceiling heights were. But I think it's nicely proportioned, very consistent with all the detailing that is common with that style.
Any further comments?
No, I agree. I think the architecture is very nice. I like the look of it, the color scheme, and this being the first petition I've sat in on it, I hope they're all this easy.
Okay. Just a further comment then, I think regarding the demolition, I think there was, I didn't want it to be glossed over, but I think there was a good show of alternative reuse and criteria for the demolition. Any further discussion or comments from the board? Would anyone care to make a motion regarding this petition?
We have to do two parts, one for the demolition and one for the replacement structure. So I would like to move that we approve the demolition, subject to the approval of the new structure.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then, I guess I'll go ahead with the second part of it. I move that we approve the replacement structure as submitted by the petitioner, and with the usual conditions that the city, there don't seem to be any special ones here, that the city has outlined in its recommendations.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you so much. I guess we're not gonna- this time, we will take a five-minute break. Thank you. change in our agenda. We will present item number 9 now, and after that, we will present item number 8. So, this is a request for approval of the demolition of the existing residence and approval of a replacement structure at 922 Oak Knoll Drive. The owners are Ally and Allison Hagehat, and the representative is Wade Weissman, the architect. I will ask our board again this evening if we have any conflicts of interest regarding this petition.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I have a conflict of interest, so I will recuse myself from this petition.
I'm fine.
I hope you're not sick of me. This is similar to the previous project that we just presented. Similar situation. This proposal is to demolish an existing residence and build a new residence for the owners, which are here tonight. They're looking to create a more beautiful environment for their young family on a nice piece of property in a more mature neighborhood. The project will remove an aging and neglected structure and an outbuilding, which is terrifically out of scale, in order to make room for the new structure. We think it would enhance the neighborhood and be consistent with the other structures on the street, particularly that to the house directly to the north and across the street on Oak Knoll. The demolition is two structures actually on site. A garage, which has been added later, is considerably larger in scale than the actual house, which was built decades before in 1956. There is really no historic relevance to these structures. We did a proposal to utilize the existing structures to create a new residence. Rehabbing the existing structure was deemed to be cost prohibitive. Again, there's water damage in this building, which has not been occupied for some time. It has black mold. The electrical services are not up to code. The windows do not meet code, and they're only single glazed, so we have some issues there. The ceiling heights are too low for code now, in that they are under 8 feet. The floor joists exceed allowable span, and the floor foundation and the crawl space is not to code due to poor installation. These are pictures of the conditions on the property now. In our proposal, the new structure that we're proposing for the site is approximately located where the existing residence is, but moved slightly to the west or a little bit further back from the street. Very consistent with the property to the north, where you can see that the house is outlined in orange. The project then takes down the existing larger new garage and the residence, and creates essentially a more eclectic English style main residence, informal in plan, connected again by a hyphen to a dependency building, which is essentially the garage structure, which is on the north side of the property. The site planning, I will essentially sort of leave up to the landscape architect. Essentially, we are asking to add a circle drive to the property with the garage access court to the north, which then allows for a beautiful sort of entry court to the east of the property, and then a nice terrace area on the west side of the house. We are making some major efforts here to essentially keep some mature trees that are on the front of the house. And I think you can see, you probably saw them on the photographs. The proposed residence is the existing house covers about 8.8% of the property. The new one is larger in that the house is slightly larger, But with the house and the garage, it's probably very similar. It's that we have a larger driveway and impervious surface area. In general, as I stated before, the house style is sort of an English cottage-style house, more highly refined and crafted, conforms in style and massing to the other surrounding forms. You can see that the main roof line of the house is north-south, parallel to the street, and connects to a garage dependency, which is perpendicular to the street. Off the front of the house is an extended east gable, and then in the corner where those two masses meet, we have a asymmetrical sort of entry pavilion, which is 2 stories in height, contains a round stair hall, and allows for as much glazing as we can to the northeast, allowing for the light to come into the stair hall. To the north of that is, in the plan, is the dining room and support space above, with another fireplace flanking the north side wall. In the hyphen, we bring the roof down to the first floor with a dormered second floor walk that connects to living space above the garage, so that there is some, breakup of roof line between the two building masses. The facade of the building is almost entirely brick. Wood trim around the windows, clad window system in bronze, casement style. The roof is machine-cut shingle, wood shingle. The chimney pots are clay as well. The facades, as we go around the building, to the south, you can see in the center, that's the main ridge of the building. And added to the east and west sides are gabled wings. On the south facade, asymmetrically placed, are gangs of windows consistent with this sort of English cottage style with transoms on the first floor. There's a band, a horizontal band that breaks the mass. Second floor then rises above. In the main body of the house, and of the dependency, we decided to clip the ends of the gabled ends to set them off and to give them more roof variety, and to set those pieces off as sort of the main bodies of the house. The west elevation shows the main body again of the house, having 2 gabled wings with a 1-story infill between the two. Another fireplace rises on the west side at the elevation. Again, the hyphen is consistent with the front of the building, and then the garage building, the dependency, west facade, again, a bay window over a garage window below. The north elevation is primarily the garage elevation. 2 gabled dormers with a shed dormer between, centered over the 3 garage doors, which the 2 also has a sort of visor cantilevered roof on wooden brackets, consistent with the sort of arts and crafts kind of detailing that we're going on the house. And you can see the wings of the main residence to the south that are a little faded back. So there's the west wings and then the east wing with the double height bay that faces on the east end of that gable on the front. We included some sketches which I think help to explain the massing of the building. Again, the front is sort of an arrival court with a 4-court terrace. The door is sort of tucked into the corner in a very sort of informal way on the facade of the house. There's a small 1-story shed roof piece to the side of that, again, consistent with the informality of the architectural style for the house. And I'd like to bring the landscape architect up, please.
Good evening. My name is Dan Miller from Mariani Landscape, and like to just kind of walk you real quick through the landscape and the gardens we have developed here. As Wade mentioned, we have a relaxed atmosphere and garden space that we're creating here, this kind of English arts and crafts style landscape where we have the arrival court and front entry here that we're highlighting with landscape hedge, a low hedge, and then ornamental trees to bring the scale of the landscape down, help soften the facade of the house, as well as complement the architecture. The mature shade trees that we have both in the front and the backyard, we wanted to bring that scale down with the ornamental trees that are located around the house. In the back, we have a terrace across the rear foundation that's broken up with some planting beds in an effort to create a few different garden rooms and use areas for dining and entertaining. Again, keeping with the casual atmosphere in the back foundation. The landscape, the amount of trees that we're planting are also replacing the trees that are removed with the house location. That's a summary of the landscape that we have, and what comes next?
Thank you. We will now ask our staff to present.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This petition is also a demolition request and a request for the design of the, approval of the design of the replacement structure. With respect to the demolition, I think the petitioner touched on an important point with respect to the existing structures on the property, and that's the incongruency between the existing detached garage and the one-story ranch structure. It really does create an awkward streetscape appearance as an existing condition. With respect to changing the existing structure, this is an area that has experienced some change over the years, but really there are quite a few ranch homes and modified ranch homes with second-story additions, but also some new construction that has occurred over the past decade. I think in this case, the increased size of the home is really mitigated with the existing landscape that is on the south side of the property, as well as the way the mass of the replacement structure steps down towards the north to the more 1.5-story structure along the street. I would welcome any comments of the board with respect to the massing and the roof form, but generally staff finds the replacement structure to be consistent with the standards in your ordinance for design review. I would like to touch on the proposed drive changes. The current proposal is for a U-shaped drive, and there is a condition of approval with respect to the landscape plan that would request a pre and post tree maintenance plan be submitted to really make sure that the mature oak trees in the front yard that's characteristic not only of this property but of several properties along this street, that they are protected and preserved before, during, and after construction. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
It is now time for the board to offer any questions or for the petitioner or staff.
Do you have a sample of the brick with you? Please. Thank you.
That seems quite a bit lighter than the rendering. Is that going to be what it is, that color, or?
Yeah, this brick is, it's sort of meant to be like a limed brick. The color of it is a little bit lighter. It's a very pretty color, actually. Let's put the one here back up. The rendering, originally when we had done the rendering, we thought that we were going to be using a terracotta base with a lime over the top of it, which is why that sort of orange tone was sort of coming through. But then we decided to switch the make of the brick. It's the same type of handmade brick with the beautiful articulation and that sort of more patinaed look. But the base color under it is a little lighter than the red brick that we thought we were going to be using originally.
Do you think that'll have kind of a yellowish appearance?
It'll have, yeah, it will definitely have sort of a,
streetscape?
it'll look a little creamier. Well,
Because the
yeah,
immediate neighbors have somewhat that color, and that is your streetscape. You will see both those facades pretty easily.
theirs is sort of a creamy yellowish color.
Right.
This has actually got a little bit more white overtone to it than that.
What would the grout color be?
The grout color would be sort of a medium gray, like just sort of a medium mortar color.
And the windows, are they, is the color in the renderings
Yes.
accurate?
Yes, we went with a contrasted sort of, here's the color actually. So the trim and the windows and the trim and the windows and the bays and the details around the roof, the eaves, and the downspouts and gutters would be in that family of color as contrast to the sort of more monolithic color of the brick on the house.
And I have a question for, I don't know if staff can answer this, or maybe you can. What's the square footage of the two existing structures?
Madam Chair, can you make sure your mic is on?
I don't know if I have the existing square footage of the two structures. We just did a percentage
Okay,
coverage calculation.
okay, thank you.
Thank God you can see it. Yeah. All right.
Joy Corona with Bleck Engineering, to
Hi.
answer your question.
Mhm.
There's a very, very hard-to-read table on the site grading plan, which depicts the existing and proposed impervious cover. The sum of the house and the garage are approximately 3949, if I'm reading this fine print accurately. And the house, which would include the attached garage, is 3481, I believe. So the net impervious is slightly reduced when you add the house and the garage from the existing to proposed on just that aspect.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Wade, could you elaborate on why the English arts and crafts style was chosen for this project and how it relates with the existing streetscape?
Well, as was sort of stated by the staff, that the street itself has got kind of an eclectic mix of houses. There is sort of a French country house that's directly to the north. Yeah, you can see it here on the streetscape. More of a story and a half. I think it's actually stucco with a wood roof. across the street, you can see this house that's in the upper left of this diagram. I would characterize that, that is sort of slanting more towards, English arts and crafts. The one below it, sort of a hybrid between, I think it goes across the channel between France and England. And the one up in the upper right is, again, you're seeing some sort of European-styled elements again. I think it's kind of a hybrid. The bottom one here is sort of a colonial with a mansard roof. They're very sort of eclectic in style, most of these residences, and I think we chose a more informal approach, and we thought with the kind of landscaping and the way the client wanted to live, that it lent itself well to having this sort of informal, asymmetrical, yet house that has enough presence on it. We wanted to sort of not overly animate it, but wanted it to have a little bit more presence. And so that's why we sort of chose the sort of house and, again, the sort of dependency. So the main residence and the dependencies kind of all sort of meld together.
Yeah, because, visiting the site, I noticed that a number of the homes on that street are ranch homes or one-stories. They're much smaller in
Yes.
scale than the proposed residence. And I know you're trying to bring down the scale with some of the certain elements, but I guess with the brick, is also another form that is not as common on the street. I see with the brick sample going towards the lighter brick, I think that does start to blend in with the neighborhood a bit more. But do you find that using this kind of English cottage that you were able to bring certain elements down to, the residential scale a little bit more? Because I guess what I'm getting at is it's very tall compared to everything else on the street.
Well, that's sort of why we chose that style of architecture, so that the elements in this sort of massing, and again, with the roof itself, I think the proportions are actually nice to the body and the roof scale itself. And so we chose a little bit steeper pitch in order to get that proportion, I think, a little bit more consistent. But that's why we also chose this style of architecture and how we wanted to break it down with some of the pieces that were coming off of these. So again, this sort of two-story bay where it shifts in scale from the first story to the second story, bringing that roof element down. Again, the sort of the entry piece, and having that roof form be a little bit different. We're trying to take the height of the house and hopefully break it down a little bit. There's a number of one-story bays with shed roofs that essentially relate more to the human scale or the one-story elements that you see down the street. But the style of the building really sort of is consistent with that style of architecture, in that the roof form to the form or to the proportion of the facade seemed more appropriate, and maybe by shifting down some of the elements, we thought we might be able to give it more of a hybrid look, even though the overall height might be taller than the other structures.
Could I go back to the color palette?
Sure.
Please. And I repeat myself, I'm not an architect, but it just seems to me that the traditional English cottage look, which I like and which I think is fun, leans more towards a redder brick than what you've chosen. And I think Chairman Vignacchi brought up a good point, that I just am afraid that color palette with the trim that tends to go a little olive to my eye is going to be awfully similar to the houses on either side of your lot. And would you possibly consider adjusting the colors a little bit?
Well, that would be something that we would like my client to weigh in on. I mean, I personally, I guess I sort of see, when I look at the landscape plan and I look at the amount of trees and the screening and the mature trees in front of it, I guess I sort of see the building sort of falling into more of the background. You know, the roof form here being parallel to the street, hopefully will, you know, be that sort of beautiful grade patina wood roof that you find on other buildings in that neighborhood. And I think the proportion of the roof and the color of the roof to the facade itself is actually kind of in my opinion, very pleasing in that I think it's a good proportion from roof to facade. Also, there's a lot of windows on this house, and the windows are a good portion of the elevation, and those being in a different form. And yes, actually, the sort of olivey, that rich sort of greenish tone to the brown is something that we were kind of going for. Again, to be more consistent with the roof color, which is going to be that sort of silvery gray eventually, in contrast to the white. And we also want to call attention to the downspouts and the gutters and some of the ornamental details of the house. So I actually, with a beautiful sort of gray mortar in that that brick is sitting on a white background right now, so it looks very sort of monochromatic and maybe look a little more monolithic than we hope it will look like when it's got mortar on it. But there's quite a few elements that help break down the scale of this. And so I guess even though it's somewhat consistent with the other buildings on the street, especially the one to the north, it seems to fit so well into the landscape of that street. We decided that it might be an appropriate palette for this.
Staying on that same subject then, isn't that the same roof as what's next door on that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so your comment was that here you'll see a lot of the roof, you know, maybe versus the color palette of the brick, which we're concerned is being too similar to the next door neighbors. And now we're actually talking about having the same roof material and color. And that's, which will make them look even much more similar. It's just a concern when you have two houses right next door to each other looking too similar.
I see.
In color palette sometimes. I think that was the concern.
Yeah, we were also thinking that because the material was very different though, in that house is stucco and sort of a monolithic, you know, color, that the brick itself would give more texture. And the fact that it's a handmade brick as well, we thought would also give it more texture, help break it down in scale a little bit. So we hope that the material differences would show some contrast.
Okay. Are you reusing the existing basement?
No.
Are you on the same, okay, you're,
It's similar, but we pushed it back a little bit because we wanted to save the trees that are in the front. So we actually, the garage is kind of behind the house right now, and so we're kind of, this house is being positioned, you know, sort of in the back half of the house and over the front half of the garage. So it's taking up part of both of those footprints.
so you're demoing the foundation also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Megan, maybe you could like further elaborate on, we're talking about the demolition criteria and in the fact that there are the two buildings which are dissimilar and, you know, reuse of, like the house would be not matching or couldn't match, or, you know, maybe you could revisit that for me, please.
Sure. In your staff report, there was mention to the inconsistency of the architectural style with the existing detached garage and the existing ranch-story home. And one comment was that in order to bring some consistency to those structures, the end result will ultimately, or may ultimately, be a demolition. And that's part of the design guidelines that the board uses is, ensuring consistency with accessory structures and principal structures. So the comment was really looking at alternatives that would bring those two structures into more consistent architectural style and relationship, may ultimately result in a demolition.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there any kind of nature preserve or wetlands easement to the south here? There's all that undeveloped woodlands there, and I'm not sure if that's part of the lot right adjacent to the south, or does the city own that, or I'm a little confused by the survey, and the photo that showed the streetscape there says that part of it was cut off because it was undeveloped wooded land, and I'm not sure if that's gonna stay that way, or?
The woodland, there's no wetland or nature preserve easement along the south property line there. The woodlands there consist of majority oaks with a lot of buckthorn understory. We are not going to be developing anything into that woodland area. The properties there to the south are additional residences that are on, what's the street over there? Everett Road.
Thank you.
Will the entire driveway be gravel?
The front entry portion, the U-shaped driveway will be gravel with concrete aprons at the street. And then the court here out of the garage will be concrete.
Okay,
So the portions visible from the street would be gravel.
great, thank you. Questions?
For the petitioners?
Or staff?
Staff?
Any more questions? Okay. At this time, we will allow any public testimony. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment regarding this petition? I see none, thank you. Does the petitioner have any final comments?
I guess with regards to the sort of discussion about the color, when you think about that with a mortar color in it, I think the overall appearance of the overall color is going to seem actually not as sort of saturated, yellowy color, which is really with the house to the north. I think the overall appearance of it is going to come across as sort of a sort of white overtone with the sort of mortar color coming through it. I think will help moderate that being so monolithic and will help create that texture that I was talking about before. And other than that, I'm actually have no more comments.
Thank you. Are there any final questions from the board? We will now take it to board discussion and comment. Anybody?
Well, I think, going to the demolition, I can see that the existing residence is a candidate for demolition. The petitioner has demonstrated in the packet numerous issues that, to me amounted as a proper reasoning to tear down that structure. The existing garage, I think, or the new garage, is just incompatible with the existing structure as well, so I can see that going hand in hand is something that they should both be removed, and neither really should be salvaged. As for the replacement structure, I think the architecture of the replacement structure is very good. It's consistent in style. I have some concerns about the scale of the structure, however, as it relates to the streetscape. In of itself, if this was just on its own lot, not surrounded by a neighborhood, I have no issues with it. It's just that when I look at it, on the street elevations, it almost, seems to dwarf the neighbor even to the north. The garage portion itself is at least a few feet taller than even the house to the north. So just looking at that, and then with the color palette, I guess I just wonder if it's too big, although I know it meets, our city requirements and bulk, and it's under bulk, which I think is wonderful. I think that's always great when that happens. It still seems to me that the scale of it is too tall, so I just, that was why I was questioning the architect as to why that style, and was there some ways to sort of bring down the scale, and in particular, it's the garage wing that seems bulky to me. And I know there's a lot of program happening in that section, and I think it's nicely proportioned, but I still feel it's large. But the detailing, in relation to the style, I think is all consistent. The windows are proportionate. The materials, other than, the colors, are also fine quality.
Mm-hmm. I think the distance from the street helps the streetscape, and clearly the landscaping will mitigate that. I personally don't have an issue with the height of the structure.
I agree. I think with the setback involved, the height will probably be okay. It's always so hard to tell. Is there anything else on the street that's as tall as your proposed building?
There are a couple of other buildings you can see here, especially the one in the upper left.
Uh-huh.
And you can see below that too, that these are all, for the most part, with the exception of elements that help try to bring the scale down, they're all two-story plus a roof.
Mm-hmm.
We try to be consistent with those other projects that we saw down the street.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the main body of the house, the scale of that doesn't concern me as much as the garage wing and its relationship to the house to the north, and just the overall bulk of it. And I do agree, with the other board members that, the setbacks will help mitigate, some of those height issues. But again, I just wonder, like, if there was some way that, that garage wing could have been brought down a little bit. Those 10'6", ceiling heights on the first floor are gracious, and for, like, the secondary kind of function of the garage, I mean, there could have been the opportunity to lower that down slightly, but overall, I think it's a great petition. It's just that the size of it, if it was on a lot over by itself somewhere, as in your previous petition, it would have fit a little bit better, but right now, next to this little small, ranch house to the south and, the 1.5 story to the north, it just is a big difference in streetscape.
We, when we were looking at that, obviously, there's a considerable, you can see on the aerial photograph, there's a considerable amount of woods that separate the house to the south from this property, actually. And because there's such a beautiful sort of oak savanna that sort of encompasses the front of this property and the properties to the north, there is going to be a considerable amount of screening from the natural foliage. And with regards to the height of the garage, for purposes of the fact that the family is all going to be residing on bedrooms on that level, the owners did not want to have stairs that brought the height down and separated those bedrooms from being contiguous with the rest of the family. And so the ceiling heights were made, or the floor heights were made consistent for the space above the garage. And yes, you could bring that down, but the wishes of the client to have all the bedrooms for the family be contiguous, I think outweighed some of those dialogues, and we chose to bring the scale of the garage down by trying to break apart some of the elements, like essentially, making the dormers, essentially come down into the roof eave, and then adding the visor above the garage doors in order to create a shadow line and break the scale of that facade down. And so it really looks like a 1.5 story elevation when you look at it from this side. I'm hoping that the proportion of that little portion of the building, which I really like, would sort of stand on its own merits.
I guess I do appreciate the fact that they're about 3,000 square feet under bulk here. I do somewhat concerned with that height, but actually I think it's kind of interrelated. My concern now is I know we have examples of 2-story, larger structures on Oak Knoll, but you bend down Oak Knoll and there's a number of ranches. And as you come towards us, as you're heading south on Oak Knoll, you go ranch, 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 and you start getting some bigger houses. I think what you're going to have is the house to the north and this house are going to be some of the only bigger houses in this pod, and they're going to be approximately the same color, which brings me to my biggest concern. I really think that a darker color might be warranted here, and I understand everything you've been saying with the the handmade brick and the grout are going to break it apart a little bit, but I think you're going to end up with a color that's pretty close to what's north, and that does worry me with this massing on the street right next to each other. So I would ask the rest of the board what you think on that. That's really the only thing that, I love the house. It's a beautiful house.
Yeah, I think it's a very handsome design. I think maybe it was my original question, so I was, I agree with the concern, and as I look at this, maybe we should hold it back further. I mean, that house definitely is, next door is definitely, stucco and has a more yellow tone to it. And this is, a little more whitewashed on top of a different base. So they're definitely both going to be light, but not yellow. I was just concerned about a yellow look right next to it. So I'm feeling a little more comfortable as I sit here and look at it throughout the evening. I don't think it's, because it's a beautiful brick.
Yes.
But, the same roof color and material will be there too.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess I fell in love with the original coloring in your renderings that are in our packet. So that's why I was
You mean
surprised to see this.
The terracotta under sort of brick with then the lime washing over the top.
Well, what the petition almost reminds me of is like the new house, to me, almost seems like it was one of the old estate houses, you know, and the communities that we have, and then all these ranch houses were built afterwards, you know, so it was like the biggest one on the block to begin with, and then it was subdivided, and then you ended up with the ranches that, but it's kind of the opposite, you know, in this situation, so I think the community eventually grow up, you know, to match it, but I
Right.
just don't know when that will be. Right now, it seems out of scale.
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing scale and color issues still here amongst the board.
Here's a picture that the owner took of a brick that he likes very much, which has more of that sort of, it's not as brown as this. I shouldn't say, it's got more orange to it than this.
Okay, and you're showing us this as a...
He just showed this to
okay.
me as an example of something that he liked, so that means that we would consider.
He's willing to
changing the color of the
consider.
brick if you felt it was more consistent with the
Mhm.
neighborhood, or with this particular.
With the green, no, the trim would still be
The
a
trim would still
brown,
be
or
this,
does this?
yes.
Excuse me, can you please use the microphone, because
Oh, I'm sorry.
missing the discussion, thank you.
But we were just presented a photo on
Oh,
a
I'm
phone
s-
of the...
Okay, so what I was told is that this brick is this, in that when it's presented in a larger field, the color of the undercolor of the brick starts to stand out more, whereas this may
Right.
not be showing, it looks like it's all sort of whitewashed.
Yeah.
It does,
There's
indeed.
actually a darker component that's underneath the brick,
Okay.
which then mixes and creates more of that sort of tone.
Okay, thank you, because
I'm sorry.
it does look different. You're only
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah.
the samples here only show you the
The
whitewash.
white,
Yeah.
and you can see there's a few chips, and there is color underneath it.
Absolutely.
So that's what this color was when I showed you. So that the appearance of it obviously is richer than what might appear on that sample board.
Okay, so for the record, the petitioner showed us a photo of a existing home with this same brick, and it did appear to have a lot more, actually, variation in the color, not
Yep.
so much monotone color. Okay. I think that's, it's a beautiful brick, and it's a very handsome house. I think that allays my fears on the similarity to the next door.
Yes,
Indeed.
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. I'm still hearing concerns over the massing of this home.
Yeah, I have concerns about that, although I guess I'm not really sure what to suggest, other than, you know, removing a little bit of height from the first floor, or, you know, the proportions of the home itself is very good. It's just, again, next to the neighbor.
Are you feeling that you're hesitant to move forward on this?
No, I wouldn't, no, I would move forward on it, but I am uncomfortable about the height.
I think it's hard without any of us having crystal balls to be able to know what's gonna happen to the neighborhood in, you
Well,
know,
if-
5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
And
Yeah,
maybe at that point, it isn't going to be the biggest house on the block.
My concern is I don't want to have, you know, in fairness to the petitioner, if I feel that we're, you know, that we should push for a continuance or with some additional questions, then that's the direction we should consider.
Well, I'm very comfortable with the demolition aspect of it, and with the color scheme, I think, is something that can be resolved with the petitioner and staff.
Megan, do you have a comment?
I do. Just based on some of the discussion that the board's been having, it may be an appropriate opportunity for a subcommittee to look at both the massing and height of the garage element and the color of the brick, so that we can really understand what the materiality of the structure will be, and also look at alternative roof forms that might address some of the concerns that have been heard.
Would that please the board, or do you feel that we're needing of that?
I'm ready to approve as is.
I'm fine with approving it as is. I mean, I think the architect has done a very good job with the style of the house, and I think that we've expressed our concerns about the materials. And is it something that if they would change material color, that it would have to come back to the board?
I think that's why it might be appropriate to have a subcommittee just on those two issues. You could take final action and approve it with direction to the subcommittee to consider those two issues so that it would not have to circle back.
Okay.
So if you wanted to use a subcommittee that way, there may be no change, but there could be some change. But at least then a subcommittee of the board is aware of what the changes are.
Okay, so that makes me feel more comfortable that we're not really holding them up.
Okay, so we would have a motion then to appoint a subcommittee of at least 2 board members, is that correct?
If the board finds it appropriate, you could approve the project subject to review of a subcommittee of those 2 items.
Okay. Would it have to come back to the board then?
Depending on how the motion is
Okay.
said,
Okay.
there's certainly, it could be approved at the subcommittee level with modifications based on the board's discussion. I think if there's some significant change and the subcommittee isn't comfortable approving it, we can certainly bring it back for the full board to take action on.
Fair enough, thank you. Okay. Armed with that information, would anyone care to make a motion regarding this petition?
Well, I'll do the easy part, which is the demolition.
You may.
I move that we approve the demolition, subject to the approval of the replacement structure.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Didn't think so, okay. So the motion for demolition of the structures is approved subject to the approval of the replacement structure.
For both structures, right?
Yes.
Structures, I said.
Yes,
sir.
I'm sorry.
I move to approve the proposed structure with the condition that it move to a subcommittee to discuss the material colors and the overall height of the structure, but and that final project can be approved through the subcommittee. It would not have to come back through the board. And any other staff recommendations in the packet.
Aye, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? So that motion has also been approved. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. Thank you. Thanks for all your time. Would you care for the sample back before we move ahead? Okay. Forgot to give the last ones back. Thank you.
Yeah. Didn't know if it was appropriate to tell him that we need pictures or something in the subcommittee. If that's what they're gonna stick with, we need to see, not just something on an iPhone. Oh, okay. Yeah, have staff tell them, yeah, okay, when they call for the meeting, okay. Oy.
Our next petition is a request for approval of demolition of the existing residence and approval of a replacement structure at 261 Bluffs Edge Drive. The owners are Devin and Robin Dallaire, and the representative is Jonathan Clare Architect, who will be represented by, would you please introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name's Dave Gillespie. I'm an architect. John Clare's unable to be here, of course, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for listening to our presentation. And
Thank
I'd
you.
like to introduce
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Devin Delaire.
Okay, thank you. Before you get started, I'd like to ask if there's anyone on the board who has any conflicts of interest with this petition?
No.
None. Okay. Thank you. Please begin.
Thank you very much. We're excited about our proposal here, and as we get set up here with the slides, I'd like to just introduce that the property is on 261 Bluffs Edge Drive, which is a dead end of a street. It ends in the cul-de-sac, and this is the property at the that would be the northeastern edge of that cul-de-sac. And here we go. No, it wasn't. I think we're just going to flip from. Okay, let's see where we are here. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start in your packet. What we're looking at is the subject site, and what's highlighted is the buildable area on the site. And as you can see, the existing house that is there is built mostly outside the setbacks of the buildable area, right over there. This shows the topography of the site. As you can see, a substantial portion of the site is a very steep grade. There are bluffs to the north and to the east towards Lake Michigan. And I just want to point out that this is the dead end right here. And this is the last driveway on the street at Bluffs Edge Drive. There's really only one neighbor, and it's over here. These are views of existing properties. I mean, the existing house, of course, looking out from the driveway, but this is the existing house that's on the site. This is, we think, was built in the 60s. It's a side-by-side split-level home, and as we go around the existing home elevations here, you can see there's some large-scale massing. This is the rear elevation at the bottom. At the north side of the house, there's large horizontal surfaces that are devoid of detail. And like I said, this is built mostly outside the setback of the existing the building setback. These are views across the ravine. I just want to point out that it's a very heavily wooded site, and here the trees don't have their leaves. This was taken in winter. And it's still very difficult to see the houses. And that's on the other side of the ravine to the north. This is the neighbor across the street, which we can't see from our property, and the neighbor to the south. And this is the neighbor to the south. Again, his house. And these are other views of houses on the street. So we have 2 houses to the south, 3 houses to the south. Okay, now we get to what's proposed here. This is the overall site. I want to point out that the proposed footprint is entirely within the building setback. And on this slide, I just want to point out that it's important to note we're reusing the existing curb cut of the driveway, actually up to right about this point, after the first bend in the driveway. As you can see, there's a relatively steep slope at the entrance to the site. Then we bring the driveway from this point of the existing driveway up towards the entry. The entry of the front house is right here. So we bring the drive up into a circular drive at the front entrance, and then we go off to it's a 4-car garage, but it's broken into two-car garage element, one side load, one front load. This is the overall site plan. I want to point out here that we are maintaining all of the existing landscaping on the street. So at the dead end right here, it's near impossible to see the existing house now. and that will remain so with this proposed house. Because the existing landscaping is staying in place, we're also, I believe that says 7 red buds that we're going to add to that front landscape. I'm going to show you a blow-up, more detail around the house here. But I want to point out right in this area, at the bend of the driveway, we're providing heavy landscape and vegetation here to, block the view of the house from one way or the other, just to make absolutely sure that we maintain the privacy of the site. That's there. Okay. Another feature here is I want to point out that along the south property line, we have heavy landscape. The existing landscape on the north side of our neighbor's property line, right where I'm pointing here, is a densely planted hedge of tall evergreens. And it's very difficult to see their house from our site, and we're adding to that by adding this landscape on our south property line. If you can see this kind of broken line, this represents the buildable area. The house footprint is all within that, of course. I also want to point out that the owner is proposing a swimming pool, which is also within that buildable area, a vegetable garden, and here you can see kind of the circular driveway with the landscape leading up to the front walk and the front door. This is easier to see, just a colored rendering of the site plan. Okay. As far as the floor plan, what I'd like to point out once again, it's a center hall plan, separated by dining and living. There's two car garages, like I said, side load and front load, to break up the scale. The plan features trying to take advantage of a lot of the views, which are primarily to the north and to the east. Of course, Lake Michigan on the east, and of course the ravine on the north. The existing house, and one of the unfortunate things about the existing house is they placed the garage on the north side, right where the primary views are, and in fact the kitchen is all the way on the south side. And so after being on the site and taking note of all these tremendous views, it's just gorgeous. We want to take advantage of those views. And on the second floor plan, we have the master suite, of course, on the north side with a roof deck. This is the roof of the covered walkway on the first floor. There's a bedroom that takes advantage of these tremendous views. And I'm going up to the roof plan, which shows most of this area is roof. And here's what we're referring to as a widow's walk, accessed by the second stairway. The basement is primarily for recreational use and entertainment, and there is a patio area here that will be open, so there's a little bit of a walkout in the basement. This section demonstrates our heights. We have 10-foot ceiling on the basement and first floor, 9 foot on the second, 8 foot in the widow's walk. I'd also like to point out that the overall height is 37 feet, which is 3 feet less than the maximum allowable height. Okay. Now, the Dallaire family just recently moved from Greenwich, Connecticut, and later on I'm going to ask Devin to address this himself, but their objectives and desires were to come up with a plan that is sensitive and in the authentic style of a seaside Nantucket shingle style that you might see on the East Coast. And so John Clare, I believe did an awesome job of taking those wishes and turning it into this house, which is really their dream house here. And I just want to point out some of the features here that we have. A stone base that hugs the ground, the shingle siding, which flares out where it meets the stone base with a crown mold. Okay, lots of horizontal lines that break up the massing. But the, you know, the materials here, Palladian windows at the large gables, smaller round windows, which match the same radius as the Palladian windows at the smaller gables, shingle siding, the roofs, the, I should say the feature roofs, the stair at the front, the eyebrow, these shed dormers all have copper roofing, copper gutters, and as we walk around the elevations, you'll see that this is consistent on all four sides here. As far as the concept, there's a center line of the massing, which is right over the front door, and the eyebrow window is centered over the front door. We have these gable elements, you know, to the south, and the gable elements to the north with the stair, which kind of balance the massing. When we get to the north side, we have a pergola that wraps around a little bit right here that helps reduce the scale. And, you know, the one-story roof lines, and as we go to the south, we're addressing our neighbor by reducing the scale of the house down to one scale, one story. There's a colored rendering of that. You know, this is probably a good time as any to show you the materials, if I can just point this out. Let's start with the shingle siding. This was just freshly stained. It's a red cedar. The idea here is, I said, a Nantucket kind of seaside shingle style, but the you know what? This is Lake Forest. This isn't Connecticut. This is a wooded lot, very wooded lot. And so we wanted to tone it down just a little bit, warm it up. So what we're looking at is kind of a olive green, transparent stain color on shingle siding. Like I said, this was just freshly stained, so it probably looks a little dark. And this is the color of the wood trim, which is a little bit of a buff beige color. The stone is a kind of rusticated with iron spots to warm it up once again, give it more of an earthy feel, and give it that kind of wooded look. Okay, as we turn around the house, this is the south elevation. Like I said, we step down the large gable into two smaller one-story gables to scale down the house when we get towards our neighbor. I just want to point out that we're trying to reduce the heights of the size of the gables and the height of the house and the two-story elements by running these copper banded skirts across the gable ends at the one-story elevations. And once again, we have consistent features and detailing around the entire house. This is the colored elevation. I'm skipping right past that. The north side of the house, once again, in an effort to scale down the house and take, use these horizontal lines to break up the mass of the house, we introduced a pergola that starts here and wraps around to help break down that two-story height. Here's the walkway over the outside the master bedroom suite. Bay windows in the two-story elements to help reduce the scale, and the pergola to just help provide another horizontal feature. And there's an illustrative of that. Once again, all of the bay roofs, the shed roofs, and the feature roofs are copper. The rest of the roof is a very heavy textured asphalt shingle. That'll be a little different color than the stone, just to provide some contrast there. This is the east elevation. Once again, consistent materials. I'm not going to dwell on the materials too much because, like I said, it's consistent all the way on all four sides. I'd probably like to point out, though, that on all four sides too, we've tried to maintain kind of a consistent ratio of windows and versus wall space. And of course, on the east side with the primary views, we want to take advantage and have some more windows looking that way. But the idea here, once again, we have a center line that's more or less right here, which is actually centered on the front door, front entry, with this gable element with the fireplace, an outdoor fireplace, off the master, this is the master suite on the first floor, I mean on the second floor, and the outside fireplace on the first floor is balanced with the widow's walk over here, which we have a breakfast room here and a bedroom on the second floor. There's also a walkout for a portion here, which frankly, nobody will ever see this, which I think is unfortunate, because I think it's a stunning elevation. I should say nobody will see it except the Dallaire family and their guests. And this is to kind of prove that point. This is a section through the site. This is at the driveway, and that dimension is actually 28 feet, 28. So you have to be 28 feet up in the air to see the back of that house, which is the Widow's Walk. Okay, 28 feet up in the air, and I'd say even then you can't see it because there's trees. It's so heavily wooded all throughout here. These are very mature, mostly sugar maple trees that are 70 to 80 feet tall. The landscape plan's been approved already, and the arborist has been out there, and the trees are tagged, and we're trying to maintain as many of those trees as possible. And like I said, all of the trees along the street will be maintained. Okay, we have a few perspective views here. This is looking southwest, from the northeast looking southwest. Okay, just to demonstrate all the horizontal bands of the Widow's Walk, the master bedroom roof deck, the covered walkway. Okay, the covered walkway, of course, has a copper standing seam roof, which continues into a skirt around the Widow's Walk. We have an outside walking area. This is the railing of the pool, and there's actually another rail that's not shown here. I'm sorry, not the pool. That's the railing of the recessed area for the walkout.
Thank you. Mr. Gillespie, we're in the interest of time. Could you make your final comments regarding this?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to just point out primarily these are the views. This would be from laying in the pool looking up, and just to demonstrate that this is very broken up, this Widow's Walk. It sets back in floor plan, the floor plates as you step up, step back, as well as to try to reduce the height. I want to show you quickly just a couple examples here. This is an authentic, I mean, this is a real life seaside shingle style example. Once again, as you go up, the floor plates step back, it reduces in height, there's horizontal banding, has a special relationship with the water. Here's some more examples. And really just to summarize, these are the features that John Clare concentrated on because he was really trying to make this as authentic a style as possible. And right from the field guide to American homes, asymmetrical facades, irregular steeply pitched roof lines. Okay, but I want to point out these Widow Walks, horizontal bands, Palladian windows, and the windows, the standard windows, grills on the top sash, none on the bottom sash, eyebrows. All the features that are really the characteristics of what he designed are authentic to this style. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have issues presented by staff.
Thank you, Chairman Binyaki. Just a little bit on the demolition request here. It's a little unique based on the fact that this demolition request really isn't based on structural deficiencies of the existing structure. The existing structure predates our steep slope ordinance, which is in place to protect our ravines and bluff areas from erosion. And looking at modifications to the existing house and alterations would really require a variance from the steep slope ordinance, and may negatively impact the bluff and ravine areas that the city and residents work hard to protect. The proposed construction will comply with all setback requirements, and given that typically when you are looking at demolition requests, the replacement structure is designed in the same location or a similar location as the existing house. In this case, it's being relocated to be outside of the steep slope setback. And as a result, there is some additional tree loss that's associated with this project, given the wooded character of the lot. The petitioner has worked closely with the city arborist to locate the house and to preserve as many trees as they can on the house, recognizing that in order to comply with some of the regulations with respect to setbacks, some tree loss would have to occur on the site. The landscape plan has also been reviewed on a preliminary basis and does appear to provide adequate replacement and screening in appropriate places with respect to compliance with our ordinance. The replacement structure, as was mentioned, is a shingle-style home, and it does have several architectural features that are consistent with that style of architecture, including the materials and some of the treatment of windows and eave lines. And in general, I think the scale of this replacement structure is appropriate for the site. This one is another project that's significantly below the maximum required bulk by approximately 4,800 square feet. So I do think we're seeing a trend in the opposite direction here. As was noted in the staff report, there is some concern with the scale of the vertical element on the rear elevation, and I would welcome comments from the board with respect to that, recognizing that it's on the rear of the house and some vertical element may be appropriate to balance that facade. But I think the design could benefit from the comments of the board with respect to that. Some pretty standard conditions of approval are noted, recognizing that staff is asking for direction and input on the rear elevation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. It is now time for questions from the board to either the petitioner or staff.
What color are the windows? The cream, the cream that's,
The windows are going to match the cream color of the wood trim.
okay. Thank you.
Were there design options that were created to keep the existing structure and just work within what is presently on the site?
Yes, we looked at that. We actually have a structural report that I think was included here. One of the issues with the existing structure, as I said, the garage is on the north and the kitchen is all the way in the south. Functionally, it's not up to what people's desires are today. It doesn't take advantage of the views that the site has to afford, but more importantly, the foundation, we think partly because it was built so close to the steep slope, is settled, and it's not appropriate to put a second floor on there. Right now, that existing house is off balance. It has this massive element on the north side and it's one-story element on the south side. So, yes, we looked at it, and all in all, we thought this is much better improvement and an upgrade, and what the Dellairs desire.
Do you have a plan showing the footprint of the existing with the overlay of the new?
Yes. Yes, the dark lines are the existing. Okay, so there's a two-story
Right, but I was looking for a
garage element.
footprint.
I'm sorry.
Footprint, please, thank you.
Footprint. You know what? It doesn't appear I have a footprint of the existing with the proposed here. I'm afraid all I have is what I'm showing you on the slides here.
Okay, so then maybe you can just tell me relatively the distance that you're basically, let's just say, for the sake of conversation, moving the structure. You're heading, obviously, well, some south and west, correct?
Yes, we're going a significant distance west. Actually, I can kind of describe here, if you, the trees that are being removed right here, that's the new footprint of the house. Right now, there's this rather large circular driveway, and the footprint of the house is actually outlined in string on the site now, and it pretty much is right through this area here. And I'm afraid I would have to guess, but I'm going to guess, I don't know, is that 100, maybe 120 feet, 140 feet, moving it to the west. And part of that, of course, is factor trying to make sure that we fit within the requirements of the setback area. Which is this line right here.
Okay, because you had commented earlier that the existing structure is, you feel failing, because of the slope that it's in right now, is that correct? Do you feel you're moving the structure far enough then?
Yes.
Okay.
That was some conjecture on our part after the structural engineer looked at it. The existing house is slab and crawl space. Maybe the foundation wasn't deep enough, we don't know.
Will the new house
there is settlement.
have a basement? You may, please step forward and introduce yourself and use the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Devin Dallaire,
Thank you.
property owner. Thank you very much. Just to answer a couple of the questions. In moving the house, the location that we chose to move the house was specifically chosen to sort of, if you look at where exactly the steep slope survey is, it sort of makes it bulge right where the center line of the house. And so our goal in positioning the house where it was to put it sort of maximally distant away from the setback line. So we didn't want to leave it too far back or bring it too far forward, because if you bring it too far forward, you're now encroaching on the front part of the steep slope setback. The current house does not have a basement. It's on a slab. The proposed house obviously does have the basement attendant.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Is the square footage of the existing house similar to the proposed?
The square footage of the current house is approximately 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
And that's, obviously, there's no basement because there's no third floor. If you look at the first two levels of this home, it's approximately 6,000, I believe, per staff calculations. So it's marginally bigger.
Because we're including part of the basement in that, the area.
But according to the structural report, structurally, the house is still sound and habitable for residential
Yes.
use. It's the request for demolition comes more because of its location to the steep slope and the desire to add more square footage.
It's I think for a couple of reasons. First is it actually is positioned, I think, very close to the steep slope setback, so that is one reason. The other reason is there is no basement. As a family, we've always had a basement. That's where we congregate to do fun recreation. There is no basement here. The driveway, where the garage is situated, as you enter in from the garage, you're actually on the opposite side of the kitchen, and so you have to go through the entire house to get to the kitchen. In addition, on the second floor, there's one master bedroom, and then a couple very small rooms, and then sort of on a half floor, there's the attic, which would be my daughter's room, and it's not really an open area. She would just sort of have to get a half floor. It really isn't conducive to sort of the way we live. Having said that, it is structurally sound. I mean, it's certainly inhabitable.
The rear elevation, if you got a picture of that, we could see. I'm a little confused by the walkout feature. The basement, I should say. The basement looks like it has a walkout. Is there a patio on top of that, or a walkway on top of that, or how does that work?
No, that's an open area.
Okay.
It's recessed. Part of it is formed by retaining walls, but, you know, there's an access by stairway going down into that area. You know, the intent was, as recreational entertainment functions in the basement, we just want to open it up a little bit to the outside, provide easy access to the pool, and so we carved that out of the, you know, out of the site a little bit. Some of the.
So is there a wall then on the east of that? And I'm looking at this particular, can you see that?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, that right there.
Yeah. There's retaining wall. This doesn't quite show the stairway. That's a little bit at an angle here, but. Yes, there's a retaining wall on a couple sides here, and there's stairs that go down into there.
So it's on, the retaining will be on all three sides with
Yeah.
It just doesn't look like there's much usable space down there. It looks very small, and I don't know if it was just the intent was to get some light down in that basement area or what exactly that's being used for.
Yes, I think there's for a couple of reasons. I think the first thing is, as you point out, it does bring a lot of light into the basement area, and that's a major purpose for that. The second thing is, it's not really intended to have a whole bunch of people sitting down there, but I think it's for one or two people to go outside, egress, actually sit out there and get some, get some air. But it's not really meant to be sort of sitting down and barbecuing down there.
And so the staircase is intended to be on, I guess, east of there, even though it's not shown here, or?
It's shown.
It is shown on one of them.
Shown on one? Oh, okay.
Let me show you the basement floor plan here. Shows we have kind of a step down retaining wall on the south side. Okay, just try to get more light there. This is a full height retaining wall on these sides. The stair here is shown straight on this. It's actually been revised on the site plan. We're showing it at an angle, and that's actually what's been proposed here.
Yeah, I've got three versions, one with no staircase, one with the diagonal staircase, and one that you just showed us there, so.
This is the correct location of the stairs at an angle like this, and that's to try to provide easier access out to the pool. It's more direct path located up there.
Thank you.
On the rear elevation, I guess, and I'm looking at this color rendering. All the windows on the first floor that are in a row there, I'm assuming that the base of the Widow's Walk feature juts out towards us, and so that there aren't really 6 windows all in a row there? There's some depth to that?
No, this is a 45-degree angled bay. This actually comes out towards us, so these sides are at an angle,
Okay.
if that's what you're asking.
And what is between the right-hand bay and, yes,
Right there.
that, is there another window there?
Yes, these are windows, you know, first off, there's a horizontal feature here of a covered walkway with the copper roof, wood columns, pergola, and then we have,
But is there a window that we can't see? Is there a fourth window?
There's not a fourth window, there's a door. So the way, do you have a pointer? Thank you. So the way it actually looks is, these are the three windows.
Yes.
As you pointed out, this adjusts. If you're right here, that's a covered walkway.
Yes.
This is the rear patio, and this covered walkway takes you from the patio and into a door. So there is a door right there that you cannot see, which is facing north.
Okay.
And that brings you into the breakfast area.
Okay. And is it a, what is the material? Is it a wooden door or a glass door?
Oh, I think it's wooden.
Wooden door, okay, so it would visually break up if you were just a little bit further
Yes,
around
yes,
the
you
corner,
would.
it would break up all those windows.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right, here we go. So.
Oh, I see,
And
okay.
then there's the door that goes
Yeah.
into the breakfast area.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Oh. I have a question on the rear elevation and the covered walkway that is adjacent to the family room.
yes?
Is that an element that you're trying to use to tie the tower feature back into the main portion of the house? I mean,
Are you talking about right here?
No, just to the right of that covered walkway that's in front of the family room, so you're really kind of shading the windows and the view towards Lake Michigan.
Oh. Okay. No, you know, it's really to provide a visual tie and a covered walkway, so to make the outside space a little bit more usable in inclement weather, but, you know, that's the functional purpose. It doesn't, you know, we don't feel like it blacks the view really, because these are transom windows on the first floor. These are tall windows.
So we actually did think about that, and it's a great point that you bring up, because obviously this is the primary view toward the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, putting this covered walkway does in fact impede a part of the view. The thing is, this property is approximately 80 feet above the water level, and right to the rear it drops off pretty steeply. And so if you could look out above here, what you're really seeing is the sky. All of the lake you will be able to see from these windows primarily, and then much less so even those four above. So if we thought that would dramatically impede the view, we would not put that in there. Mainly the reason that's there is to provide a tie-in from the outdoor patio here back into the breakfast area without certainly getting wet.
I had a similar comment on the fireplace, exterior fireplace. You're using up all that east facade. I think you've got a study in that first floor / library that is not going to have a view out to the east at all. Then your master bedroom, I think obviously that fireplace element goes up there. But now you've got in your master bedroom just those two small windows over the lake. Did you give any consideration maybe to open up those areas a little bit more to more windows and moving that fireplace at all?
Sure. Can we go back to that elevation? Okay, the one that we were just looking at? Thank you. Okay, so the decision to put the fireplace here was actually after the fact, after we had designed the office. So the room right here is my office, and there's a couple things that I really wanted in the office, which is one, bookshelf. That's the primary thing. And it'd be great to have an office where I had a nice view toward the water, but there's really two issues. First issue is the property is so wooded and there's so much vegetation on the bluff that if you're really on the first floor, unless you're in some very key locations, you don't really see that much of the lake. Most of the lake views are going to come from the second. And so we thought it would be just sort of much more appropriate to have the views out into the ravine from the office. So sort of sitting in the office looking out into the woods, that type of feeling. So we did not have a problem giving up that particular view. From the master bedroom, we do have 2 windows as opposed to 3 or 4 windows spanning all the way across. And I think what we thought is, since we actually have a patio walkout, it's nice to, if you wanted views, you can go out there and see the lake. And these 2 windows are fairly large, and you can see some of the lake from there. But it was sort of a compromise between having the fireplace in the back and necessarily having 3 windows as opposed to 2. I think we were okay with that compromise.
Just to clarify, we received additional drawings beyond the first packet. Are those supplemental, or they don't include any changes? Is that correct?
I can speak to that. They are supplemental and no changes are proposed.
Okay, thank you. What material are you proposing for the garage doors, since you have some facing the front of the home?
So ideally, out in Connecticut, these are very similar to what we had in our house in Connecticut. These are going to be the carriage-style wood doors with the glass transoms at sort of eye level. So wood with the carriage style.
And your plan is to use the same wood on the front door, the garage door, the rear elevation, family room door?
I'm not sure if that's that's the intention, is to use the exact same wood. I think we would use, there'd be wood doors, but I'm not sure if it'd be the exact same as the garage door. I think the garage door would have a lot of vertical element in the panes. And for the front door and the rear doors, they might be more of a traditional wooden door.
Okay. Well, the drawings kind of look like they're...
They do, and I apologize for that. That's,
Yeah, I'd say the important thing is it's you know, we want it to look consistent, but also the front entry door, I don't think should be the same as the garage door. We want that to be special, so that's going to be more glass, but I'd say at least complementary to the other wood that's used in the doors.
Okay.
And is the pergola attached to the structure, or is it freestanding?
That is all, I believe that's all independent, freestanding. Yes, it's going to tie into the structure at some cross ties, just to more or less, I believe, just to structurally tie it, but it's supposed to give the appearance that's an independent structure. So, there's probably going to be a couple of ties into the house.
And will that be wood? What are the
Yes.
materials of that?
The pergola is all, it's wood, and we're looking at AZAC for the trellis.
I'm sorry, the
I'm
trellis?
sorry. The pergola is, it's 8-inch diameter, we're saying permacast columns, and AZAC for the trellis. I know it's all gonna be finished the same kind of buff color.
The color that you've got there on the siding, the shingles, it seems, and I know it just got stained, but it seems darker than what you have in your rendering. Your rendering's pretty bright green. Ultimately, would you rather be the shade more towards a rendering, or do you like that darker? What's kind of the...
So I think ideally, it'll be what this will look like in maybe 6 months. It'll be lighter than this. It won't be that dark. I think largely the rendering that we're seeing here is certainly brighter than what you'd have in reality. It just, on a computer image, certainly would not be a faithful representation, but it would be something like that, but maybe 2.5 shades lighter.
Trying to see this pergola.
The copper roofs and elements to the Widow's Walk, those will be, you've colored them green, and that's what you expect them to look like down the road when,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes, it's real copper. We expect it to patina over the years and eventually turn a copper green.
Sorry, I'm gonna go back to that pergola, since it seems to be more of a attached type structure. Are the columns going to match the other columns around the house?
Yes, I can tell you, all the columns will match.
Okay.
And it's, I'm looking to see if this is represented in plan here.
Just because it's not like it's a casual garden thing, it looks like it's more, part of the structure, so.
It's definitely a design element within the
Okay.
structure.
Right.
And it's one of the elements John Clare was picking up from the shingle style. And, okay, I'm gonna
Now,
plead.
from the front elevation, that's all you see in terms of any of those columns, then, is the pergola columns, is that correct?
Yes, the front elevation. You know what, now that I'm looking at this, and this is really a question for John Clare, but it looks to me like the front, we wrapped around here just to finish it off. And now that I think about it, I think this is the intent. The way it's drawn now, there's one row of columns on the north side right there, and the trellis does tie into the house. This column wraps around, so it pops out in front of this elevation and ends there, terminates there. So I think I was mistaken when I said it was freestanding before.
Okay.
Just for your question, I believe the main places that are columns are the pergola and the rear elevation.
Right.
And the question you asked, are they going to be consistent? Are they going to be identical? And I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
That is absolutely the intention, is to make them identical. We don't want to
Right.
break up that consistency.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we will allow anyone from the public to step forward and comment. Either microphone is fine. Please state your name.
Hi, Don Sardani. I reside at 277 Bluffs Edge, property to the south. I'm in support of this project. It's a beautiful piece of property. It's been neglected for a while because no one's been living there, unfortunately. So this is going to be an improvement to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Is there anyone else we have from the public who would like to speak? Thank you. Seeing none. Would the petitioner care to have any final comments or regards to petition?
Sure. I just want to say thank you for obviously taking your time to be here and listen to the presentation. Just want to add just one sort of side note. We just moved here to Lake Forest from Greenwich this past January. And when we moved here, it was probably the furthest thing from our mind to think about building. And the reason is very simple, because in Greenwich we had just built our dream house there, and unfortunately we had been there less than 2 years and work took me back home to Illinois. But really two things changed that in pretty short order. I think first is we've really grown fond of the community in a pretty short period of time. The people and the aesthetics of the town are just beautiful. The second is this property, 261 Bluffs Edge. Had we not found this property, we probably would not be interested in building, but we just sort of fell in love with this property with the combination of woods, the ravine, the lake, and we want to put something there that obviously we like aesthetically, but at the same time does justice to the property itself and the community. So that's, I think, what we've done, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any final questions from the board to the petitioner or staff? Okay, at this time then we will open it up to board discussion and comment. I'll start with a original comment of, we're talking about a demolition here, and I was a little bit concerned on the fact that the house is structurally sound, and it's only because, obviously it's the slope, but there seems to be there's a lot of room to go the other direction and possibly continue on with that existing structure, so I don't know.
Yeah, that was my initial thought as well when I first looked at the package. I mean, I really couldn't see any problem with the existing structure. Structural report didn't find any major issues with it, and some of the issues with the interior, with the garage being on the opposite side of the kitchen and such, are items that have been successfully addressed in other petitions by remodeling the structure accordingly. I know, of course, it costs a lot to do that, but it also costs a lot to tear down a structure and rebuild something. So that is something that I have struggled with. Why are we demolishing a perfectly good house? What made me a little bit more comfortable was just the fact of that the proposed structure will be brought in from the slope, and that would be an improvement to the bluff's edge, for erosion and things like that.
But
Okay. Ironically, we have not even discussed the Widow's Walk at all. I don't mind the feature. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts were on that, especially the staff actually was kind of pointing us to that feature.
To me, the Widow's Walk itself seems a bit out of proportion. It seems tall, and the bell-shaped roof on it just sort of emphasizes the verticality a little bit more than I think is proportionate. I think what concerns me more on the east elevation is just that it doesn't really address the Great Lake view with enough windows. I mean, I feel like, the covered walkway is really, it's not blocking the view, but it's shading the view. It's limiting the amount of light that's coming into that space, and not having any windows at all into the library just makes me wonder, well, the library maybe shouldn't be, on the lake side. So I think the other elevations are all very well done and, work well with the style. It's just the rear elevation doesn't seem to take, really, it doesn't, emphasize the main reason the house is placed on the bluff and on the lake. So. But I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is the demolition of the existing house and the precedent that sets, because it really, there's nothing really wrong with it.
I agree. I too am concerned about setting a precedent on the demolition. I understand your reasonings for it, but I just hate to see houses being torn down when there isn't a structural problem. I think the Widow's Walk, to me, just looks a little contrived, and maybe it's the lines of the cap. I think your daughter's got better views than you do. Wouldn't work that way in my house. But that's your personal choice. Otherwise, I think generally it's an attractive building, and I like the finishes that you've chosen. I guess that's about it.
Okay. Well, I absolutely agree with Monica's assessment of the rear side. Maybe it's just something that the petitioner would consider themselves. However, as you pointed out, it is their personal choice. So it is, how they want their home to look from that angle, I guess. Are we feeling like we're comfortable with this? Do you feel like there's some concerns here with this rear elevation and the Widow's Walk?
I don't mind the concept of the Widow's Walk. It might need some little toned down detailing. I think that I really think the covered walkway, the lack of the view. There's such nice. You can do in-ground fire pits now. I don't know if you really need a fireplace outside. You could do an in-ground fire pit that probably take you closer to the lake. I think would be a nice option that maybe you want to explore. But the hesitation is it seems like the demolition. Maybe we should go through that again. How many criteria out of the 5 do we have we met in this petition?
I think it seems like it's 3 out of the 5.
Right.
It's criteria 1, it's not historical. Criteria 2, with the realistic alternatives, adaptive reuse, etc. I mean, it doesn't really meet that. Criteria 3 is it is not unsuitable for residential use. So it does not meet that criteria. And then number 4 and number 5, it does meet that. I mean, it's a lovely new building, and it will be a benefit to the neighborhood. So it's missing 2 pretty big ones, in my opinion.
But we only are required to have one of those.
Is that correct?
Megan?
Do we only have to meet one of the criteria for demolition, or?
You would have to present positive findings on all of the criteria for demolition.
if you added on to the front of the house, it would then, would that then require significant demolition, that we would then be talking about a demolition?
I think when staff was looking at this, we were looking at it both with respect to improving a condition of the structure being within the steep slope setback. If any regrading work was to be proposed to improve some of the grades that were, or grading issues that were mentioned in the structural report, that could negatively impact the bluff. The city engineer was consulted on this one and did foresee some impact to the bluff with modification to the existing structure. With respect to, and so that would kind of cover additions to the north and the east. If they did a significant addition to the front of the house, I think based on the definition of a demolition, that would be a significant change to the character, and a considerable amount of demolition would occur to make a structure work. If the board is feeling like more information is needed to really address some of these criteria, it certainly would be appropriate to identify that and have the petitioner work towards further addressing the criteria.
And I would just add that doing work on a house that's within the steep slope setback is also a concern, even if there was no expansion of the footprint to the east or to the north, because you have the ravine on the north and the bluff to the east. It's unlikely that any extensive work would be approved, because there would be a limitation on equipment, material storage, anything that occurred on both the east or north side of the house. We've had situations where just the construction activity alone, working within the footprint of a house in the steep slope setback, has really prompted significant erosion of the bluff. So the concern about doing much at all on this house, because of its location so far into the setback, really I think is a unique factor that you don't see with many other demolition requests.
What kind of impact do they think the demolition of the existing structure would cause to the bluff?
Well, with any demolition within a steep slope setback, we will work with the city engineer. It may be that the entire, in this case, it's just a slab.
Oh, that's true.
But we will work closely to make sure that the work is appropriately staged, that appropriate equipment is used. In the case of an existing foundation, sometimes we actually require that an existing foundation wall remain. But we would look at that carefully to minimize any impact on that area at all, and then quickly fence off that area so that all construction activity stays far away from both the bluff and the ravine.
And does the demolition that they're requesting call for complete removal of the existing slab?
I don't know that the discussions have gotten that far, but that would be something that we would look at and consult the city engineer before we issued any permit.
And what would it do to your floor plans and landscape plans if the slab had to stay?
So I think there's a couple things immediately. The first thing is it sort of eliminates the possibility of having a pool, because the pool is situated exactly where the slab is.
Right.
And in fact, I mean, one of the issues with keeping the house where it is you can't put a pool anywhere unless you want to put it in the front yard,
right,
which probably wouldn't look too good. So I think that would be a big issue. Second thing is there is overlap between the slab or the current house and the proposed new house. So I'm not sure what the engineering impact would be to put a foundation, a basement right next to an existing slab or cutting away part of that slab. My guess is just, I mean, one of the issues with the house is that if you go around the house, it does look like there has been some settling of the current house into the ground. If you actually look outside and you look where the siding is almost exactly at ground level. If you look at where the air conditioner slab, that's 4 inches down into the ground on one side. These are things that would concern us, and certainly when we bought the house, I mean, we certainly thought of the eventuality, the possibility that we would not be able to demolish it. And, you know, we talked to each other about, my wife and I talked to each other about living in the current house, and we really thought about what we could do, how we could rearrange things. And at the end, all of these factors, including the location with respect to the steep slope survey, a steep slope setback, the inability to install a pool, really not even having much of a backyard. Those are all the reasons that contributed in tearing down the house. Obviously, everything given, we'd rather keep a structure that's functional than not.
Thank you.
So do you have an easement, an access easement going through your property that you have to maintain, or
We do
what's
have
the
a-
status of that?
We do have an access easement, and I can show you exactly where it is. It's on the north side of the property, and it is 20 feet. So if you look at the, sure, if you look at our property line up here, it is 20 feet to the south of that property line, all the way across, and that is an easement for the residents of the Bluff Edge subdivision, which are the 15 plots that are on Bluff's Edge Road. And it's their easement to get to, can't see it in this picture, but to get to
The beach, I presume.
the 100 by 100 neighborhood community beach at the base of the ravine. So that's their access, and that's for use by Bluff's Edge subdivision. So that would certainly maintain, it would not be impacted. There's not really anything we can do to impact that. It's, the easement actually has a creek running through it most of the time, so.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a path that obviously people take.
Thank you. Okay, so to further our board discussion regarding demolition, are we looking for further information regarding that? Or are we comfortable with that at this juncture, based on staff's comments?
I don't know what further information we'd get. I think it's, I think the fact is the house is probably livable as is. I mean, without adding on, et cetera. Personally, I'm comfortable with a homeowner in this situation. Obviously, case by case, I'm comfortable with the petitioner's thoughts and ideas, and this structure, the existing one being demolished personally. But I ask the rest of you.
I agree with Charlie. I've had enough questions answered by staff and the petitioner as far as the viability of the lot. I don't think, generally I'm kind of against demolitions, but I don't think this house is, the existing house is anything all that special. But I'd like to see them work with it, and I think anything they did to it would be such a drastic change that it wouldn't even resemble the existing house anymore. So I guess I'm comfortable with demolition.
I am kind of on the fence right now.
I think one thing that swung my opinion was the fact that they're moving back away from the steep slope setback. That's it's described as a dead end. That's a very prominent bluff location. I guess I've trespassed because I didn't realize it. That was only for homeowners association to go down to the beach. But that bridge across there that goes between the two neighborhoods, one of the most pretty places in Lake Forest, and I sure would hate to have something done with existing place that might deteriorate that bluff, et cetera, the ravines on both sides. So the fact that they're moving it back a safe distance away was prominent in my mind when I got comfortable with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still a bit on the fence as well. I think, some of the arguments that have helped me a little bit are staff's discussion of any work, to the east elevation could further harm, the steep slope area. But then again, just demoing that area is also hurting it. So, I mean, part of me, has agreed with staff saying, yeah, okay, well, if you're gonna do any work back there, you're gonna, be damaging it anyway, so might as well take it all out and move it away for the bluff. So that was a good argument for me. But however, when I look at the existing footprint sitting on the site, I mean, it's got the great views. It looks like you can add on to the west side and, add a wing to it, and you would probably be able to create a nice piece of architecture there. So I'm somewhat on the fence. I see it though as this is a unique situation. I mean, if this house was in one of the other subdivisions where you don't have the steep slope thing, I don't think I could vote for the demolition because it's a perfectly fine house.
I agree. I think I would lean toward going with it just based on the steep slope situation alone.
So we're good with that?
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion, please, regarding the demolition and replacement structure?
So for the demolition first, I move that we approve the demolition of the existing structure as indicated on the drawings.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing we have a majority, the motion is passed.
For the replacement structure, I don't know what anybody else's thought is about, but I'm a little concerned about the rear elevation, and I think that some further discussion could happen on that. Perhaps we can do something that we did with the last petition, that we could approve the project but send it to a committee for some refinement.
That would be fair.
I like that idea.
Mhm.
Okay.
And have the power within committee to approve it so that
Correct,
it
yeah.
might not have to come back
Yeah.
before the full board.
Is that acceptable?
I think so.
Okay, so what are the, how would you like to word that in terms of, what elements we want to have addressed at the subcommittee? So the petitioner can have clear direction on that.
I think it would, final elements of the Widow's Walk and the covered walkway.
And the fenestration.
Yeah, the fenestration and the covered walkway.
Okay. So I'm hearing those three items then? Okay. That being said, could someone please make a motion regarding that also?
Okay, I move that we approve the replacement structure as indicated on the drawings, with the exception of the east elevation, which we would like to review in a subcommittee. And the elements we would look at would be the Widow's Walk, the covered walkway, and the fenestration. And the project could be approved within the subcommittee and would not necessarily have to come back before the board.
Do you mind if I ask a
Right.
question, just for clarification? I don't want to be out of order.
Well, there's a motion.
Yeah.
There's right in the middle of the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I second the motion.
Okay, did you include the staff recommendation?
And all the recommendations provided by staff.
I further second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. That motion is also passed.
Okay, thank you very much. When you say, we'll interpret what you said, but the Widow's Walk, the fenestration, and the covered walkway, and specifically on the covered walkway, I didn't follow what you were getting at there. What was the direction on the covered walkway?
I think we're concerned with the depth of it and impairing views and so
Block-
forth. and
blocking
but-
light from
Blocking
that
light
room.
and stuff, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood
Yeah.
that.
I think that's,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the opportunity for the public to address the board on non-agenda items. Okay. No one has stepped forward on that, so we will then move to ask the staff if there's any additional information at this time.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Now you have to come up with 2 subcommittees.